The world has an Achilles heel. Now, when I say Achilles heel, I mean a site of mortal danger. In my perspective, that site of danger is Europe. Today, we are all well aware of the fact that the site of mortal danger happens currently as a result of the armed conflict between the Russian Federation and Ukraine. The fact is that in an unprecedented situation since World War II, the Russian President Vladimir Putin has threatened the use of nuclear weapons. This is entirely unprecedented since World War II, which was the only occasion in which we had the use of nuclear weapons. But it becomes a problem because what happens in Europe these days is problematic, with the North Atlantic Treaty Organization being the obvious geopolitical counter to Russian intentions. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, likewise developed a nuclear security strategy in 2022, in which it identifies nuclear weapons as the chief basis of its own security. Furthermore, it's problematic that Elizabeth Truss likewise believes that NATO should be expanding into a global NATO. And in expanding to a global NATO, of course, that threatens the worldwide spread of affiliated nation states with NATO, who would then have obligations under the doctrine of collective defense that would include the use of conventional and nuclear weapons. Since the establishment of NATO, we're well aware that the United States has many forward-based systems in Europe, which is, of course, is why President Putin feels threatened by the advanced intermediate-range nuclear weapons that are placed in Europe. Accordingly, when I say that the world is in a situation of mortal danger, it is time for us to realize that we need to do what we can for nuclear disarmament. In last year, the world had some nations that agreed to what is called the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. Bangladesh happens to be one of the signatory countries with that particular treaty, but we need more nations to agree that such weapons should be prohibited, because it doesn't count as a nuclear balance of power, it counts as a balance of terror. And to the extent that there is a promise of nuclear war, should it happen at any time, the fact is that it would count as a global genocide. A global genocide is contrary to anything that we understand in terms of both moral and legal rights for the whole of humanity. And this is not something to be determined merely by a couple of nation states such as America, or a military alliance such as NATO, or the Russian President Vladimir Putin, simply because they have some ongoing conflict in Europe. Accordingly, it is my recommendation that we all do what we can, once again, towards nuclear disarmament, to work towards positive peace rather than merely negative peace, and we do what we can thereby to safeguard the world against a prospective global genocide.